Good evening, friends. Welcome to S.O.S with Stephen T. Manning here. As you can see, Integrity Ireland. S.O.S stands for Save Our Souls, as you know. Sowing of seeds, Stephen on Sunday, however you like it. And we've done pretty well tonight. It's only about 7:30 or so. So to get straight to it, guys, as those of you who are following us will realize now, for the last 3 or 4 videos that we've done, actually, this is number 4 in a row, we're focusing almost exclusively on this concept called the original principle. Now, the reason for this is, guys, that it's not that there isn't plenty of stuff, interesting stuff happening in the world around us, but the problem is we are looking at most of the traumas and dramas and shocking events that are happening all around us now through filtered lenses. And what I'm trying to do is to present this idea of the original principle as the lens by which we should be looking at all current events and also looking at the way we manage our own lives. And to that end, we are by the way, I'll apologize before I start here, guys, tonight. I've been sick this week, quite, nastily sick. I haven't taken any antibiotics or anything like that, but I've had a really bad headache. So I do apologize in advance if I'm not as chipper as I normally would be. All right. But anyway, as we've done before, welcome to those of you that are coming on board. If you want to pose questions, please do, guys. Or comments, and on occasion I'll look over, especially if we have time, I'll look over and we'll put those comments up and do our best to answer them as we go along. But as I did now in the last couple of weeks, as you can see, introducing the first ever documented substantial archetype. Why is this either interesting or worthy of comment? Well, the fact is, guys, archetypes are things that affect us, themes, ideas, psychological constructs that affect us all, regardless of our time that we live, the era in which we live, regardless of our sex, whatever. It doesn't really matter. We're all affected by these things. They're subliminal constructs, but they are notions, they're ideas, they're dreams, they're concepts. Well, we've discovered here now this original principle is the first ever substantial example of a substantial archetype which has been documented. So just to quickly recap on last week, we'll do the same thing as we did last week, but only a couple of slides this time. What is this original principle? Simply, very, very simply. Well, it aligns, first of all, with the properties of light itself. That's why it is so universal, and that's why it is so important. The idea is that we have spirit, mind, and body. And when you have the right spirit and the right mind and the right body, you have, of course, a true human or a child of God. Okay. Now, the problem with this is that ever since the fall from Eden, the mythological proverbial fall from Eden, arguably, there haven't been any true children of God. Not necessarily because people, and of course, the classic example is Jesus, someone like Jesus, who arguably was a true child of God, but unfortunately he lived in an environment that is known as the kingdom of hell on earth. And you need the combination of all the factors to make this thing work. Okay. So very simply, we're just recapping here, guys. As we say there on the right, please see the videos number 1 to 3 to get fuller detail on this. But this original principle presents itself in theories of the soul, going back to the Greeks. Okay, it presents itself in the structure of the atom. It presents itself in human DNA. It presents itself in the scriptural mythological story of Eden. The tree of life, the tree of knowledge, representing masculine and feminine, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's a super important concept, guys, and I think the more of us that understand this, the sooner we'll understand how it is we have to deal with the problems we're facing on a daily basis. Here's another slide again, just to recap. These are scientific extracts from websites showing that what I'm telling you is absolutely scientific fact. Okay, The numbers 440, 400, and 770 and 700 repeat with uncanny consistency in human history, which phenomenon we will cover in a future talk. We're not going to cover that particular aspect today, guys, because certainly an hour will we push to cover it in an hour, okay? But it's just to re-emphasize that there are proofs that there's something strange going on about the properties of visible light that seem to be reflected and reproduced in not only in human history, but in all of those aspects I just explained to you a few moments ago. I'm suggesting there's a reason for this. Once we understand that reason, we start to identify fundamentally, I suppose, the difference between good and evil in our own lives. And the third one we covered last week very quickly, the color of plant life harmonizes with the original principle as well, because it corresponds precisely with the masculine and feminine aspects of light. And here you see, guys, the reason that leaves are green is because the red wavelengths and the blue wavelengths, which represent the masculine and feminine respectively, are being absorbed. All right, so that's how we see it as green. So that's just a quick recap. I hope to do that each week. Let's start off now. And like I said at the beginning, we're talking about the psychological proofs as well as scientific. Well, psychology is a science, of course, and scriptural proofs that these three colors in particular have some specific special meaning. All right. Now, I've taken this off the internet, guys. It's just one site. It's a little bit PC. They want to, it's sort of feel good, nicey explanations of the different colors. But, again, I'm just using this one example. There's so much information up on the internet now today. Just go and research yourselves, guys. Even since I wrote the book that I showed earlier, the Color of Truth book, yeah, Amazing Coincidence or Intelligent Design. I wrote that the first version about 25 to 30 years ago. I think it was 30 years ago. At that point, there wasn't an awful lot of material on the psychology of color or the meaning of color or anything like that. But now there is, guys. There's a whole swathe of them. Now, they're not all 100% on the mark. Hardly any of them understand some of the notions that I'm telling you about today. And I don't say that out of any sort of arrogance, guys. It's just, it's just a fact. I happen to get into this in such a manner. I brought studies from theology and psychology, from sociology, also a certain amount of life experience in many different jobs. And it was because I had that sort of broader view, I was able to make sense of certain things that some of these specialists don't do. So, yeah, this is just an example. We're making a point here, guys. So what does it say about white? The color of purity and innocence. White is a true balance of all colors. Why did they say that? Because the light spectrum that we see, which is made up of all of the colors of the rainbow, when we see them all together, we call it white light, okay? So I hope that makes sense, okay? It's associated with cleanliness, simplicity, and perfection, loves to make others feel good, and provides hope, and so on. So it's one of these websites that are, promoting their own products or whatever, But I've just put in there the dove, the spirit, the notion of a God, and, a spirit, mind, and body, do you remember? And you'll see there in the center right, the chakra system, which corresponds also with the original principle, with the crown chakra often being represented either as white or a rainbow of colors. All right, that's the white light we're talking about. The communications chakra in the throat area. Communications, what's that's about? That's about wisdom, which is the feminine aspect. And then down to the red chakra at the bottom, spirit, mind, body. The body chakra rooted down there in the groin, and also connected with sexual activity and anger and force and power and all that sort of stuff, as we will see. Hope you're with me still, guys. All right. So now when it comes to the scripture, this I hope you'll find interesting, because white is the color that's mentioned the most often in scripture. Now, I'll just stick with the Bible for now, guys, because we'll do others in future where we're focusing on examples of this original principle in different scriptures from different religions. So it's recorded, they say, 75 times. Of course, there's different versions of the Bible as well, guys. You've got to take that into account. But the important thing to note is it's the most reported color in the Bible. And if you notice there, 3 lines down, the third most referenced color in the Old Testament. Oh, sorry. Look at that now. I made a very sorry about that, guys. I made a silly mistake. It's the third most referenced color in the Old Testament after blue and red. So here we have the white, the blue, and the red, the 3 colors mentioned most prominently. I told you I had a bit of a headache at the beginning, guys. I've taken a tablet. I don't normally take medicines, and so I apologize if I sound a bit foggy tonight. Okay, down the bottom here, symbolic meanings of white in the Bible include purity, righteousness, holiness, and spiritual victory. For example, Revelation 19:8 describes fine white linen representing the righteous acts of God's people. And it illustrates the forgiveness of sins, exactly. And Jesus's transfiguration also depicts his clothes as white as the light, symbolizing divine purity. So I hope that point has been made, guys. It's all in the book. But for people who aren't familiar with this idea of the psychology of color, this will help. Now, because we've just talked about white, we're going to also talk about black. Now, as I said to you guys, this particular website, and they're being a bit PC. They're trying to find all the nicey kumbaya positives about everything. That's why I've plastered across it the absence of light. Now, what you might notice, now, of course, I've put over there on the right-hand side the sort of demonic symbol there, you know, the 3 6s, the satanic black-red symbol. That'll come into play in a few minutes, guys. You'll start to understand it, because black is not, in fact, a color. They talk here about black being a color. It's not, actually. Now, having said that, I have to correct myself straight away, because in pigment form, it's a color. We can use it to paint fences and doors and paintings and all that. But when it comes to light, black is actually the opposite. It's like non-light. It's non-color. It's the absence of light. This is very important to understand when it comes to color symbolism. Now, bottom right, you'll see there, I've got 2 little inserts there. Let's go to the one on the right first. The one on the right is what I call the autocratic or diabolical pyramid, which represents most of the structures of the world. And it's all about, you see, it's the opposite. Light and sovereignty and all that sort of stuff are grouped on one side, and black and darkness and oppression and denial of the spirit and all that are parked on the other side. So that pyramid on the right there represents sort of concept, plan, and action. But if the concept is dark, it's bad, then the plans and the action are not going to result in something good. It's as simple as that, guys. All right, that's the 3 stages. Okay. Now on the left, those of you that remember now the COVID phenomenon, and we were told that the 2 particular strains that were most dangerous were Delta and Omicron, which interestingly is an anagram of media control. Now that in itself is interesting enough. But then you look at what the signs and the symbols for Delta and Omicron are. And in Greek, they represent the circle and the triangle. And if you put them together like this in what they call a thermogyrchic triangle, if I've said it right, or thermogyrchic or something like that, it's actually the symbol they started using for these non-gender toilets it might have been Switzerland, I think. It's that symbol is being used now. So you go and use a male toilet or a female toilet. This symbol is on the toilets for let's call them the trans or the confused gender type people and everything. Well, it's also the symbol used by Satanists to draw demons up from hell in their symbolism. It's all about symbolism, guys. That's why I keep telling people this original principle is so important. Hello, Lena. Nice to see you. The first person that's commented tonight. Yes, nice to see you. I don't know what your comment means at the moment, but to you as well there. And we'll keep pushing on here. Next slide. So in scripture, yeah. So let's have a look. And this is just black, okay? Now I took this off another website, guys. I do this so that you can see I'm not drawing only on my own opinions here. This is what other people are saying too. What is the meaning of black in scripture? What is its relationship with Satan, the devil? Because a lot of people do argue about this. And the figure of Lucifer is actually quite, I must explain this before I read this to you. The figure of Lucifer is quite polarizing, because there is a large swathe of people who actually believe that Lucifer is the original sort of God figure, based on the fact that he's called the light bearer and all this sort of stuff, okay? And the higher echelons of things like Freemasonry at the United Nations, the Lucifer Publishing Company, known now as the Lucis Trust, and so on, that we covered in previous presentations, there is a requirement to swear an oath of allegiance to Lucifer. Now, there are academic studies that talk about the origins of Satan. I've got that book here, but then again, it's an academic's opinion. You know, but the fact that evil exists cannot be contested. Okay, that is a obvious and absolute fact. Evil exists, and it only exists through human agency. Now, how and why it's getting there also is something we'll get to in due course. But the fact is that it exists. The other fact is that evil is an attack on this original principle. All right, that's the simplest way to explain it. Everything is in harmony, is in balance under this original principle. Evil is an attack on that. Now, why could this be so? Well, we have to look into mythology, and we have to look into scripture, and we have to look into these deep psychological archetypes and things like that to understand why, you know, how this has come to be and what it exactly means. So I'll pull this up again and I'll continue reading, guys. All right. Black is, of course, the darkest color in the Bible. It lacks brightness or a hue, and although it absorbs light, it does not reflect any back. Now, this is all highly symbolic, guys, of this notion of a Satan character, okay? Scripture states that God is light, and that Lucifer's name, given to him by the Creator, means light bringer or morning star. The universe was initially created not to be dark or black, but rather to be filled with light, both literally and figuratively. When Lucifer chose to sin, however, he turned the light within himself to black, which God determined beforehand would be a consequence of disobedience. He became the first dark thing that had ever existed when he committed spiritual suicide. And my diagrams at the bottom there are just purely to illustrate, guys. If at the beginning Lucifer, first of all, was male, that's what the red represents, the red end of the spectrum, and was spiritually connected to God, yeah, as a spirit, the light bringer, that would have been his symbolism on the left there, the reds and the whites, similar to why we see Jesus almost always painted in reds and whites. We'll see that in a few minutes as well. So then the fall happened, all right? And if you remember during the fall, I just bring this up again, guys. If you remember during the fall, Lucifer doesn't approach Adam. Lucifer approaches Eve. Why? Because I explained before, Eve is in that central middle position between the spirit and the body. Spirit, mind, body. So a spirit has to communicate through Eve to direct the body. All right. And in this case, the body represents the masculine, the mind represents the feminine. That's also why Cain's offering was refused. He was supposed to give his offering to Abel to offer it to God. It's all in that sequence, guys. It's all right there. Once you start understanding the symbolism, you it really just starts to hit home. So let's just finish the sequence here. So at the bottom there, that's him in the middle falling. Oh, Lucifer, how have you fallen? You know, star of the morning, how have you fallen, and all from heaven and all that, right? And then eventually over on the right, you see I've put red and black there next to the demonic Satan figure. Why? Because black has now replaced the light. The dark has replaced the light. And that's why red-black symbolism is so often used to portray villains, and obviously in any sort of satanic iconography. And believe it or not, this transposes across into our political choices for flags of the world and things like that up to a certain point in history. And we'll do that another day as well. But I've got a couple of very small examples to show you. I hope you're still with me so far, guys. Hello, Gary. Nice to see you, buddy. Nice to see you. Danny's over my shoulder here. I keep having to tip the camera a bit away from him because he got a present from his sister. Wait a minute. I'll show it to them, Danny, yeah? Oh, Danny, he's got his earphones on. He's so good. But that present, now I don't know how clear it is. All I can see is a blob of light from here. but it's actually a light-filled sort of parrot thing that you can tip it, and it rocks backwards and forwards. And Danny wanted that on tonight, so I said, of course, son. And he's been very quiet now. He's watching the World Cup and got his earphones on and all the rest of it. Hopefully you won't get another flash from him tonight if he decides to use the bathroom. Anyway, let's keep this on track. It's done it again. It's all right. It's only a slight over thing of the thing. So in the physical universe, a black hole is a celestial object whose massive gravity pulls everything into it, including light. Yet itself, it remains dark. Lucifer became a spiritual version of this physical phenomenon when he took all the light God gave him and turning it into darkness. In Western cultures, darkness symbolizes death and mourning. People sometimes wear dark clothes when they are mourning the death of someone they love. And I just thought this was interesting. It's not necessarily part of this archetypal quote coincidence, because we know if coincidences keep happening, they're not coincidences. But I just found it interesting that this particular Bible study group says that the color black is recorded 18 times in 18 King James transcripts or whatever. Okay, 3 6s are 18. Just interesting. It may or may not mean anything, because sometimes it is literally just pure coincidence. But when I see things like this, sometimes it's worth a mention. Okay. Right. And on to the next one. So now we go on to red, guys. And again, I'm just quoting from this website. Let's have a look. It says it symbolizes, I think we might have to squint a bit to read that, action, strength, energy, and passion, which I'm suggesting is the masculine end of the spectrum versus the feminine end, which is blue, right? Motivates, stimulates, cautions, attention, positive sexuality. Isn't that interesting? They have red as the sexuality, and it's also the red sexual chakra. Yeah. Courage, desire, confidence, all tend to be, masculine constructs. On the negative side, anger, danger, revenge, and aggression. Think of war. Think of the previous satanic masculine, the reds and the blacks. There's no spirit of goodness there anymore. You tend to drive all the negative aspects of the masculine tend to come from this darkness, okay? Seeing red means feeling very angry, and so on. The color of passion and energy, red draws attention like no other color and radiates a strong and powerful energy that motivates us to take action. It is also linked to sexuality and stimulates deep and intimate passion. Red is ubiquitously used to warn and signal caution and danger. How very interesting. But again, I hope when you look back now at the original principle, the things we've talked about in previous videos, it's all starting to hammer home. Everything you read, everything you see, almost without exception. There will be a few exceptions to the rule, but that's what makes the rule so powerful, guys. Okay? So, wait a moment. I have to just come back now. And next slide, here we go. The word red appears 53 times in verses of the King James Bible, with 6 occurrences in the New Testament. There's your 6 again. Interesting. Now, I'm not going to read all this, guys. But in the middle there, you see in the Old Testament, Hebrew words translated as red include Adam, and Adam. Isn't that interesting? The original man, he was also red. In some traditions, he's made out of red earth and so on and so forth, right? It symbolizes blood, sacrifice, war, and God's judgment, and so on and so forth. Feel free to read this yourself at some point, guys, because when we do, we'll do a closer examination of each of these colors as they are represented in scripture in particular. And there are some powerful, compelling examples of this original principle being written into the scriptural text without the authors even knowing they were doing it. Isn't that fascinating? Not today, though, guys. All right. And here we are, the example I wanted to give you guys. So we're going back to, remember, I was saying the white and the red combined symbolizes the pure masculine still connected to God. And again, go and check it for yourself, guys. Just put in a search of pictures of Jesus online. Just do it, guys. Just go and do it. And I'll guarantee you that 90% of them will have Jesus dressed in red and white. Occasionally he's in blue and red, which is interesting too. But almost, I'd say about 90%, he's going to be pictured in red and white. Fascinating, okay? Or maybe pure white, but red and white, okay? On the other hand, as you can see from these pictures, the as it says there in the clip I took off the internet at the top there, in Western culture, red and black are the two most sinister colors, as red typically conveys the meaning of blood or anger, and black is that of darkness or death, being a very visually striking combination, blah, blah, blah. Now, you can go and check that red and black and evil all over TV Tropes website if you want to, guys. Just put that in on the internet, it'll come up. There's me showing you Dracula on the left, the satanic symbolism in the middle, and this demonic looking creature on the right. I'm just throwing them in, guys, just to make the point, because you'll find this as well. It's, again, ubiquitous across movies, storylines, mythologies. You know, almost always the black guys will be, you know, they'll have the red bandana and the black suits and stuff like that. And there below, I've just put in those 4 flags to emphasize the point. The one on the left was the German, I think it was the First Reich. The one in the middle is obviously red communism, you know, the flag of communist Russia, the Soviet Union, sorry. Then the Japanese flag. Why? Because when they were attacking what, let's call them loosely, democratic nations, and again, it's striking. The symbolism is overwhelming. It'll take your breath away when I show it to you guys, maybe next week or the week after. And of course, the Nazi symbolism. There's all these combinations of reds and blacks, right? The white can either mean the presence of white, or it can mean the absence of color. And in some cases, we've got to assume that's what this means, all right? But Japan, for example, with the white and the red, that translates to a masculine empire, okay, that very much suppressed the feminine in their cultures, much so as, you know, the Nazis is all about strength and power and violence and oppression, you know. So just emphasizing the point, guys, that's all right? So now we move to blue. And as you can see, it's all about, let's have a look at the symbolism at the top there. It symbolizes security, trust, loyalty, responsibility. Yeah, in opposition to, you know, the power and the anger and the lust and the action and all that of the masculine, okay? It has a calming and relaxing effect on our psyche that gives us peace and makes us feel confident and secure, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so on the positive side, it promotes, calms, relaxes, supports, gives confidence, peace, honesty, and reliable. Okay, all very nice stuff. Like I said, I'm not taking this as, quote, gospel. It's just an example to prompt you, if you care to go and just research what does blue mean in psychology, or what's the psychology of color concerning blue. Again, overwhelmingly, you'll find the occasional exception to the rule, but overwhelmingly, they'll tie into this feminine concept, okay? I stuck in turquoise as well from their website because it's a form of blue, but again, the color of calmness and clarity, thinking, all right, clarity. Turquoise stabilizes emotions and increases empathy and compassion, feminine traits. It emits a cool, calming peace, gives us a boost of positive mental energy that improves concentration and clarifies our mind and creates a balance that clears the path to spiritual growth. As a matter of fact, that's very good, isn't it? You know, the path to spiritual growth, the blue connected to the spirit and all that. Yeah, very, very good. Compassion, calmness, clarity, communication, the throat chakra, the communications chakra, okay? Yes, peace and empathy and so on and so forth. Excellent, guys. So I hope the point is being made. Yes, hi, Ida. Yes. Not so many comments yet tonight, but if, like I said, if you feel like it, guys, you fire away. Now, oh yes, before I hit you with this, okay. Oh no, yeah, okay. Reading from the top. And I'm so sorry, guys. Sometimes I forget. I have to, when I make the slides, I'm supposed to do a screenshot then and create another slide of all the composite materials on it, because this happens sometimes. Something overlaps, but I know what it says. It says the color blue, specifically the word, is mentioned 50 times in the Bible. Now, please listen carefully to the next line, guys. And all mentions are found in the Old Testament. Now, why is that so? And I'm going to hammer home a point here again, friends, that I hope you'll bear with me here. All right. I've often said that the Old Testament refers to the chosen people, for example, in feminine terms all the time. My daughter Zion. I will visit her, and I will shower her with gifts and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. Always talking about the chosen people whose symbolism, by the way, was blue and white. Okay. Talking about them in the feminine language, with feminine language. But funny enough, when you come to the New Testament, there's no mention of the word blue in there at all, which is this feminine color. Now, I'm suggesting the reason for this is because the New Testament was produced and captured very quickly by a patriarchy, a male-dominated institution. There's your Roman Catholic cardinal on the right, interestingly dressed in reds and blacks. I don't think this is something that should be ignored, my friends. And I'm speaking as someone who almost became a priest myself. I did seminary studies and everything, guys, but there were certain things that I just couldn't line up in my own soul and conscience, if you like, and I went a different route. But as you can see here, their iconography, the flags of pre-Reformation Christianity, which most people would consider to be what is now considered the Catholic Church, all right, even though you have Orthodox Christianity, that's separate. So this is the church that was largely based in Rome, Roman Catholicism, with the Bishop of Rome in charge, who eventually even dominated the kings of Europe. Whilst over in Eastern Europe, you had the, should jump to my mind. Anyway, Eastern Orthodox, based in Constantinople, but they surrendered to their kings. The kings were their bosses, if you like, But just look at the complete absence of blue, except for in the little string thing, they're holding the keys together. Why is there no blue in any of the icons of pre-Reformation Christianity? Interesting, is it not? It's because Roman Catholicism is a patriarchy. It's set up in this pyramid structure, which I say aligns and conforms with the diabolical mindset. Okay, we've talked about this on other occasions. It's not just the Roman Catholic Church, it's all large institutions that adopt these autocratic models. They're following the original diabolical principle in opposition to the sovereignty that we're entitled to as children of God. Yeah, interesting, is it not? Okay, so that's why. Now, here's something else too about this New Testament. There's a website you can go and have a look at, guys. 5 female New Testament leaders who were given sex changes. All right, catchy title. They were all said to be men at some point in church history, and their involuntary gender reassignment probably has everything to do with their status. This is underscoring and underlying just what I've said to you guys. There's your cardinal again on the right. The church, which was composed largely of powerful men, and a lot of them were actually at each other's throats at the beginning. The very early popes, for example, they were murdering each other in order to get the political status of being the Bishop of Rome and this sort of stuff. And anyway, it's another story for another day. But the fact is that 5 prominent women in the New Testament story had their names changed to make it look like they were men. This is a trait of the diabolical, satanic masculine. It's one of the traits, the suppression of the feminine, guys. All right. Moving on. How are we doing for time? Oh, yeah, so far, so good. And now, as a matter of fact, we went quite quick tonight, actually. But yeah, which one's this? All right. So I said we'd talk a little bit about psychology. So this was a construct I came up with about 30 years ago. I was studying the psychology of religion at the time, guys, and I was trying to make sense of Carl Gustav Jung's interpretations of psychology and Christianity and religion and everything in some sort of a logical, understandable way. And I think this is worth spending a couple of minutes looking at. Now, over on the right, there's the more modern notion of concept, plan, and action. You see, I make a comment at the bottom, stages of human consciousness and the triadic archetype. Well, the triadic archetype is this original principle. I use this new title now. The original principle is a more accurate summation of what the original triadic archetype was. Okay, so starting at the bottom, we have the material world under the red line there, and our physical activities. That corresponds with actions on the right. Then under the blue line, we have normal consciousness and awareness and thoughts, which corresponds to the feminine aspect, the mind, wisdom, and the plans. All right, that's where we think up our plans. All right, now just above it, I've got personal unconscious and dreams and inspirations. Now up to this level, so you've got the two blue dotted lines there, up to the second one, right? Everyone sort of tends to agree with this. Yeah, that all sort of aligns with, yeah, we have dreams. There's a thing called the personal unconscious. And then we wake up and we're conscious. That's where we make our plans. We're aware, we're thinking. And then what do we do? Well, they end up becoming actions. And you see how it all corresponds together. But the whole notion of the personal unconscious and dreams and inspirations, it starts getting a little bit foggy. I mean, we know it exists because we all have dreams. And we all drift off sometimes, whether it be sleeping at night or daydreaming. We wake up in the morning. I'm doing this all the time. Danny's always asking me, how is your dreams, Dad? And even if I say to myself as I wake up, oh, I must tell Danny about that, I've forgotten it. I can't remember it 20 minutes later. It's gone into that place, the personal unconscious, that we can't access while we are conscious, right? And now when you line it up with what's above it, it starts to make sense, guys. So above that line, then we have the collective unconscious, which is a concept, all right, where I've got this universal archetypes live there, things like this original principle, all right? But if you bear with me for a minute, guys, let me explain this now if I can, because I studied psychology as well and the psychology of religions. Some time back, I never worked actively in the field, but I did use it to inform my research and my other work that I've done. So this idea of the collective unconscious, it's a concept a bit like salmon being able to swim up a river that they've never seen before, or homing pigeons being able to, come back and all this sort of stuff, that there's a consciousness that we can tap into that is available to all of humanity, except we don't actually tend to know how to get to it. All right. Some people can get hypnotized into this condition. But generally speaking, we don't really know. We're not consciously aware. Well, I'll just sort of go, and I'll drift into this place. Now, some people can do it, of course, and they come back with these interesting ideas, and there's great wisdom hidden in there, and so on and so forth. But it's one way to account for people having an accident or something like that and waking up speaking a second language that they've never learned, or having memories that go way back into antiquity. And they can accurately remember as if they lived in another era centuries before. This sort of stuff, guys, okay? This is one of the explanations for this. I believe, when I say I believe, I would go so far as to say I know it exists. These archetypes reside there. They affect our conscious and active selves, our personas. And often we don't know how and why it's doing it, but it does happen. All right. But if I then add this top category here, guys, which I'm calling the realm of great unknown, all right, where we have human speculation about ultimate reality. In other words, it's some distance even beyond our personal and collective subconscious, unconscious, okay? But could this be where God lives, all right? And is the only way that God can communicate to us through these universal archetypes and the collective unconscious, a place where many sincere religious mystics spend their lifetimes trying to access. You understand where I'm going with this, guys? And then to put it even further, if I'm saying, according to the original principle, that's supposed to be our birthright, that's supposed to be as real to us, the realm of great unknown, as the material existences that we live in today and our conscious awareness and thoughts and reality. This spiritual aspect is supposed to be there as well. Okay. Now I just see D has just put up a comment. Let's have a look here, D. When do we start the tradition of dressing baby boys in blue and baby girls in pink, which is a shade of red? We really are living in an inversion. Yeah, you know what, D, when I said earlier, excuse me, when I said earlier, there are exceptions to the rule, That, unfortunately, is one of them. It would be far handier for me and this theory to say, look, you see, that's why we dress little girls in blue and little boys in red. But it doesn't, you know. Now, I remember doing research on that, D, and I'd be interested to find out. Maybe I have to go and do it again. There would be different factors which affected that. But yeah, pink is a shade of red, of course, but it's a girly shade, you know. I really don't have an answer for that, guys. But when you look at the completeness of the original principle, that is an anomaly that doesn't quite align tightly with the original principle. But if you look at fully developed men and women and all this color psychology, it's absolutely aligns. The red is the masculine, the blue is the feminine. And the blue is associated with things like the moon, with water, clouds, rain, all that sort of stuff, nighttime. And when you get to yin yang, it's also aligned with negative and, believe it or not, evil, which is wrong. And we'll cover that another day, though. Whereas the masculine is all associated with fire and sunshine and daylight and positive and good, of course. But then again, it's because patriarchies are often the ones coming up with these ideas, and they've been demonizing the feminine for centuries, and it's completely wrong. And it's part of the way Satan has kept us all trapped in what he's doing. Yeah. Right. What's the next one? Yes. So just to hammer home the point again, guys, that I know I've showed this slide before, but domination, deviousness, and destruction. This is what I call these diabolical hierarchies, these organizational constructs that are designed to deny us access to the divine. Because, as I said before, it's a truism, is it not? You join a company, you join any company for a job, and it's basically the agreement is, I, the manager or the boss, will pay you a certain amount in monetary compensation in order for you to basically do what I tell you. Now, I'm not interested if you don't like it. I'm not interested if you think it's a bad idea, unless you're one of my administrators or senior bureaucrats or something. You're here to do as you're told. And in return, I'll give you material rewards. Yeah. If you start emphasizing, oh, I don't feel too good about doing this, that, or the other because my conscience, and what's your conscience got to do with it, Sonny? I'm paying you a wage, aren't I? Right? So this is very interesting, guys, because the state that the world is in today is largely because these autocratic constructs have been dominating human society ever since Cain set up the first city in Enoch. And who was his inspiration? Satan himself. Yeah, it all starts to click, guys. It all starts to make sense. And then you realize, oh yeah, what would genuine freedom feel like? It would actually be not having to ever answer to any of these diabolical constructs again. Instead, your authority would be your informed mind connected to the Spirit of God. Simple as that. And that's where we're heading back. We're heading towards it, guys. I don't know how many more satanic demonic attacks there are going to be, like the the C-19 phenomenon. But you can expect them to come, guys, because they're getting increasingly more desperate now as more of us work this out and realize that the answer is to claim back your sovereignty and your sexuality through your spirituality. Yeah. All right. And by the sexuality here, and just to read the text there, true sovereign people forming collaborative communities based upon the traditional family unit. There's the atomic family right there in the middle. Yeah. Spirit, mind, and body, proton, and neutron, electron. It all makes sense, guys. Our destiny is godly sovereignty, not diabolical dependency. We've got to claim our power back. It's still a bit difficult accessing it, guys. But once we see the signals and the symbols and the traits of, in particular, sociopathic elites. Sociopathy is people who are absent love. They're absent that light, guys. And they act out in diabolical and demonic ways. Unfortunately, they are running the show at the moment. Yeah. And, oh yes, I had a couple of examples here to show you again, guys. This again is out of the Color of Truth book. And these are just examples that I came up. And I've got something like 4 or 5 pages of these charts under different titles. I was trying to make sense of it in my own mind. Let's just have a quick look, okay? So because they're in this order, I've got red, white, and blue, you know, putting the white in the middle. Obviously, you have to think of it in the other sequence. It's white first, then blue, and then red, okay? But first of all, the light spectrum, deep red and deep blues in the red. Then we have infrared and ultraviolet in the color spectrum, yeah? We've got proton, electron, neutron. We've got up quarks, gluons, and down quarks. Now, if you need to know more about this, you'll have to look at previous presentations, guys, okay? Electricity, the electromagnetic spectrum, and magnetism, okay? 700 nanometers in one end, 300 nanometers or infinity would be corresponding to white. I think it's the number of infinity now. And then 400 nanometers on the blue end. Positive, fusion and union, and negative, okay? Now, negative doesn't mean wrong, okay? It means literally negative in the magnetic sense. It is the opposite to the positive charge, okay? One reflects or attracts the other, all right? And then at the bottom, experimentation, observation, and reflection. So in that order would be observation from the spirit, if you like, then reflection in the mind, and then experimentation that we do with the physical action, all right? I hope this makes sense, all right? And we've got one more, I think, for you here, guys. Oh, yes, this one. Example 3, psychological and psycho-spiritual. Nice big word there for us, okay? Once again, spiritual, social, and material. That corresponds to spirit, mind, and body, okay? Noumenal, ideal, and actual. Again, these notions of these theological sort of notions, okay? The next one, inspirations and dreams, then thoughts, and then reality, all right? Spirit, mind, body again, okay? Unconsciousness, consciousness, and creativity. Now, I'm not saying these are all perfect, guys. I put this in the book. People might come up with new ones or be able to tweak these and change them. You see one I had to take out because it was back to front. I'll read it to you in a moment, okay? Questers, so people who are looking in curiosity, intrinsic and extrinsic, so internal or external, okay? The psyche and persona, the anima and the animus. These are the masculine and feminine properties of Jung's concept of personality, okay? Integrated psyche, femininity, and masculinity. And at the bottom there, you'll see personal choice, environment, and genetics. And that relates to something I spoke about before, that everything, hello, Philomena, nice to see you. Everything that we do can be compacted with a bit of creativity, a bit of, a bit of imagination into this 3-part structure. And the idea behind this one here, well, we start at the bottom, actually. The action is genetics. So when you're born, right, you don't pop out of the womb like Methuselah, you know. You're born a little lump of flesh and blood and bones and brains, all right? It's your genetics. And your genetics correspond, of course, to the DNA material that your parents combined to produce the baby, all right? So your genetics are so, right? There's not much you can do about it. I look like this because my mother and my father looked the way they did, all right? I'm this height because correspondingly, you know, I got that from my parents, the DNA, right? The environment relates to the social environment in which we were brought up, because this does affect who I am. Of course it does. But ultimately, what trumps them all is personal choice. So even if I'm born with certain genetics, and even though I might be brought up in an environment that might not have been very good for my development and everything, I can still make a personal choice when I become fully informed as an adult to do something about this. It's quite interesting anyway. But anyway, just making the point, they're just 2 of about a dozen of these charts I have in there, all right? So we're starting to wind down now, guys. Lies equals the currency of deceit. Liars are Satan's salesperson. The solution, courageously confront and challenge with the truth. This is the single first and most evident and obvious giveaway, friends. If someone lies to you, especially if it's a serious lie, yeah? Now I'm talking about in particular big corporations, governments, you know, sociopaths and psychopaths. They do this routinely. It's part of their vocabulary is to lie. all they're thinking about is, how do I get what I want? If they can get what they want by telling the truth, they'd probably tell the truth. But it's all about their own selfish ambitions. They don't care about things like ethics or morals or truth unless there's consequences for them if they're caught. That's basically what sociopaths are. They're on the evil end of the spectrum. It's as simple as that, guys. And they live amongst us. They walk and talk and live amongst us. Some people can be trained to be sociopaths and psychopaths. Okay. Some people are born like that. Unfortunately, many of the environments that we grow up in are sociopathic environments who are constantly being invited to cheat, to steal, to exploit. And this changes your personality, guys. It changes your soul, your spirit. And we need to understand this. And again, it's all about this original principle. Okay. So this slide, I like to put this in just as a wind down, guys. This is in my book, Crisis Color Coup. It was the last book I did. I think it was published in 21. As you can see, it's about the COVID phenomenon, but it's not just about the COVID phenomenon. There are two central themes in the book. One is the truth about the COVID phenomenon, and the other is about the great lie. And when you combine the two of them, it explains a lot about this original principle and how we've got to wake up to what's happening around us in the world, especially to this great lie. And we always start, and it might be a bit difficult for you to read that, guys, but if you screenshot it, freeze it and expand it, at the top I say here, the truth is out there if we only have the courage to face it. Lie number one, that governments work for the people. Number two, that all people are equal under the law. Number three, that public servants serve the public. Number four, that democracy replaced tyranny. And we'll just do 7 today, guys, yeah? Number 5, that political parties are not autocratic and self-serving. Now, autocracy, in case you don't understand, guys, is the opposite of democracy. It just doesn't make any sense. We're voting in autocratic parties who act autocratically but claim to be following a democratic mandate. It's a nonsense. We've all got smartphones now. We could have direct democracy tomorrow. We don't need these scheming, devious political scoundrels anymore. Get rid of them, Number 6, that we have a genuine separation of powers. That's to do with the concept that there's 3 branches of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, that they're all actually separate. They don't interfere in each other's business. It's a complete nonsense. It's a huge lie, guys. And then there's the 4th estate, the mainstream media, which is supposed to be holding them all to account. And that too is another great lie. And finally, number 7, that the authorities can be trusted. All right. Maybe we'll just do 7 like that every week. But to encourage people, please, to go and get the book. It's one of the ways you can support us. I'm trying to make this, there it is. It's one of the ways you can support us. You will notice, guys, I don't ask for money. The last time that I actually allowed someone on my behalf to put a request out for some funds was when my dear wife Noriko passed away, and we were made homeless the very same week. And, thank God and thank all of the good and decent people out there who contributed, we were able actually to cover the funeral costs out of the funds that were raised. And but more so, what was so very encouraging to me in particular was that there were literally thousands of people who I'd never knew existed. I'd never heard from them. They'd never made a comment. And the tragedy of losing Noriko and us being made homeless, and then the Irish state came after us, like with all guns blazing, and jailed me again. And, it was just horrible, they cut off Danny's payments and everything. It was all to silence us from telling the truth about what's going on. And although I'm covering it here now in an umbrella form, and letting other people maybe deal a bit more with the individual examples, the mass immigration, the COVID phenomenon, the wars, political liars, it all comes back to this original principle. If you understand this, you start understanding what they're doing and which things it's okay to go along with because it's generally heading in the right direction, it's good, and which things we should absolutely be saying no to with everything we've got. The trouble is most people don't get it yet. They don't fully understand the difference between good and evil in the bigger picture, and they tend to go on their emotions or on peer pressure or on what the authorities tell them, and I'm telling you now, guys, that's no way. It's no way to operate, guys. We have to have a notion, understanding of this original principle. From there, we can start working out, So thank you to everybody who did support us during those difficult times. We have enough funds to live comfortably, and we have enough food on the table. We have a roof over our heads. I've got enough money to be able to pay for these websites and things like that. So that it's not a pressing issue, but I do want people to read the books. And of course, when they buy the book, some of the royalties come to me. It's like, I really sincerely on my heart, I think, not because I wrote it, but because the ideas in it, a lot of them did come not just from ardent research, my friends. And I say this not trying to sound like a holy Joe or anything at all, because I'm as flawed as anybody else, guys. But some of these things, I think, could be termed revelation. All right. And you can take that any way you wish, guys. How I came across some of these notions, maybe I'll talk about that another day. But some of it is beyond the scope and explanation of sort of everyday events and research. All right. There was more to it than that. I believe I've been given a mandate to get this message out there as best I can to as many people as I possibly can. I put this in again, to let you know our rights come from God, not government, guys. And there's a lot of this going on, especially in Ireland, guys. They're absolutely trying to displace and replace the notion of God, who is supposed to be there, the Trinity and everything, the Christian notion of God as the foundation of the Irish Constitution. They're doing everything in their power to finagle the way around this and get rid of it. These people are not good people, guys. The political class in Ireland, there's a couple of rare exceptions that I'd be happy to shake hands with them. The rest of them, long walk, short pier. Yeah. All right. That's you in the middle of the pyramid there. Our destiny is godly sovereignty, not diabolical dependency. And I think that brings us up to the last slide, just in time as well, my friends. Thank you again for, hello, Maureen. Nice to see. Thank you, Darren. Darren. Yeah, great to listen, Stephen. Oh, thank you, Darren. I appreciate that, because sometimes when we don't get a lot of views, I am being heavily censored, guys. You must know this, all right? That's why we put this up afterwards. We do shorts. We put them on TikTok. We do shorts. We put them up on X. We put some out on WhatsApp. Again, like you say, I'm conscious. I don't want to sound like a clickbait chasing person. I'm an educator, guys. All right, that's my primary function here. And I'm looking at the bigger picture, not necessarily just all the issues that we have to deal with daily. So if you like what you hear, please share it. I don't fully understand how these algorithms work, but I think I said this once before. On one occasion, the first time I said I was coming to do a live video, 130,000 people were waiting for the live stream to go live. That's a fact, guys. I can go back and prove that. By the following week, because of the topic, and I think it was around the COVID era at the time, by the following week, that had been cut by 90%. So it went from 130,000 to 13,000. And again, that was cut the following week. It was down to about 120, 130. And now I'm lucky on these live streams if we get just more than a handful. Clearly, we're being suppressed by the big boys. That's all right. Satan's got his job to do as well, as long as they know that's who they're working for. All right, guys. So I'll pull up the last slide there. That's where you can find more about us. And apologize for the hair, guys. I'm letting it grow out a wee bit while I still can, making the most of it. And God bless everyone. Thank you again for visiting this evening, and hopefully see you again next Sunday around 7 with part 5. God bless everyone.